Good evening and welcome to today's session for the subject Urban Governance and Development Management. Uh,
Good
as
evening.
Hello, I'll wait for 5 more minutes, see if anyone else joins, and then we'll start.
Right. Thank you.
It's 5 minutes now. I think we should start the session. So, This is session 10 for week 10. So we'll be discussing questions that were assigned in week 10 of the past run. And these are the lectures that would have been covered for week 10. This includes fundamentals of project planning. So in this you would have studied what projects are, how you define a project, what are the different stages associated to the project, how each stage is planned and prepared, what are the significance of each stage, what are the different project planning principles, what are the basics of project planning, so what are the different kinds of methods or processes you can apply for project planning, and also a little bit about the different kinds of tools that you can use for project planning. Next, we would have covered formulating projects. So this would have covered how projects are formulated, so the basic principles of project formulations. Then how is this used in the preparation of DPRs, so different elements of DPR, and then how project formulation is used for DPR preparation. You would also have seen a few examples of DPRs or DPR preparation. Next, you would have studied project monitoring and management. So, why project monitoring and management management is essential, why you need to monitor certain projects, what are different stages and activities associated with project monitoring. How in this lecture you would also have studied a little bit about project procurement, how projects are procured through bids and contracts, and then a little bit about management of the monitoring and how it is associated with project implementation and the process of project implementation. Then you would have studied its relationship with the completion and post-completion of post-completion stage of a project, how monitoring and management are related to that. Then you would have studied essentials of infrastructure and engineering design. In this you would have covered the nature and different types of engineering activities, specifically in the context of urban development and for urban local bodies. So what kind of different infrastructure and engineering design projects are taken up by municipal bodies or urban local bodies, and how they go about doing that. So you would have studied the fundamentals of engineering considerations that are taken, and also few commonly used terminology that go with infrastructure and engineering design projects by municipalities. Then last, you would have studied managing of trans-municipal and large projects. So these are the projects which span beyond the spatial or jurisdiction scope of one municipality, and it services an area which is larger than that of the spatial limits or jurisdictional limits of one municipality. That is why it's called trans-municipal projects. So you would have studied why large projects or trans-municipal projects are needed, what are the concerns that arise whenever we plan or design trans-municipal projects, what are the challenges municipalities or urban local bodies face while undertaking such projects, and what are the different approaches and methods to go about planning and implementing these projects. So this is what has been covered so far this week. We'll start with the questions then. So the first question for today is, a typical project execution follows the stage of, and then we have four options: control, planning, closure, and definition. So this is what you would have studied about the different stages of project or project life cycle. So it can be seen both ways. Different stages of a project can be seen as a linear process also, or even as a cyclical process. So many projects, they have a beginning and an end. So they start at some point and then they end, and they do not repeat. However, some projects are iterative in nature, they go on in a cycle, so they have more of a cyclical project life cycle. So in this you would have studied the different stages that are there in the life cycle of a project. So first, it starts with the project definition or the initiating process. So in this you define what is it, or what are the goals or objectives that need to be achieved from the project, what are the resources that you need, what is the time frame in which you would want to achieve it, all of those things. So first you define the project. So what are the goals and objectives you want to fulfill from this project, what is the either asset or service that you want out of this project, that is the project definition part. Then comes planning for it. So what are the resources, so it will be both human resource and other resources that you will need for it. Then what is the time frame of the project planning implementation, then maybe service delivery, or then control and monitoring processes, etc. So the time frame for all of that, maybe then budgetary constraints. So how the project will be financed, how it will be, what is the budget that is needed. Then maybe formulating the institutional framework through which the project will be delivered. So all of these things come under project planning. Then comes the execution. So after you have planned all the aspects of a project, then comes the execution part, in which you implement the project on ground, and you go through the several steps as planned in your project plan. And then you go about executing that. While the execution or after the execution comes the process of control and monitoring. So control usually happens more towards or during the execution time, and monitoring goes parallelly both during the execution and after. So control is something which those are steps or mechanisms that we design in order to control how the different stages or steps of a process are being implemented or delivered, how the service or asset at the end of the project is being delivered. So you can control different aspects of it using control mechanisms, and using monitoring mechanisms you can you don't what monitoring does is that it keeps a look over the execution of the project, and it collects data or feedback or information from how the project is going, in order to either improve it or just uh, for later projects. So monitoring is something which doesn't interfere with the project, but just collects information about the project, and control is something which collects information about the project and then tries to implement strategies or mechanisms in order to improve the how the project is being implemented or executed. So this is the control part, and then comes the closure. So after the final asset has been prepared or delivered, or final services have been prepared or delivered for its life for the project's lifetime, then comes the time for the closure of the project. So you have to wrap up all the operations. Maybe you have to dissolve the company, or the institutional arrangement which was set up for delivery of this project. You have to maybe prepare a closure report. You have to submit data about the monitoring, whatever you have monitored throughout the project's life cycle. Maybe you need to report the data about that, etc. So those all things come under closure. So this is what these are all the different stages of a project's life cycle. And in case if your project is iterative in nature, so again after closure you have to then start again from redefinition of the project. So then you plan again, then execute again, then control and closure. So sometimes it's a cyclical process also. So in the cyclical process, you take the feedback from the monitoring and control process, and you involve it and you report that during the closing process, and then that feedback then helps in better definition of the next stage of the project or the next project, if it is of that nature. So this is what the cyclical nature of the project life cycle is. So I think it is very clear now what the different stages of a project are. and I think you can very easily tell that what follows the execution stage. We'll move on to the next question now. So the next question is, pre-feasibility study is a part of, and then you have four options: urban development plan, impact assessment, enforcement and control, and DPR or detailed project report. So I'll just explain a little bit about what all of these four components are. So urban development plan, you already know, it is a statutory plan which is prepared to provide necessary details and intended actions in form of either strategies or physical proposals for different policies that are given in a perspective plan and region or a regional plan. So you detail out those various policy, and from those guiding documents or guiding policy documents, you prepare actual implementable strategies and physical proposals which can be implemented in the urban area. So that is what an urban development plan is. That is done based on the economic social needs, aspirations of the people, and also based on the available resources and priorities. So that is what an urban development plan is. Impact assessments are basically kind of assessment reports or assessment projects which are carried out to assess the consequence of any kind of activity. So it can be individual projects, it can be other things also. So an impact assessment is done to learn the consequences of that activity or individual project, and then to better plan the project in order that in a way that you can reduce the negative consequences or negative impact of that project, and you can improve upon the benefits or the advantages that you can get from that kind of project. A very good example of impact assessment is EIA, or environmental impact assessment. So environmental impact assessment is undertaken to assess the impact of any kind of project or activity on the environment where this project is going to be executed or where it is being planned. So what kind of impacts this project or this activity will have on the surrounding environment. Assessment of that will be called as environmental impact assessment. Similarly, there are even social impact assessments and several other kind of impact assessment typologies. So this is what impact assessments are. Then enforcement and control. We just saw in our in the typical project execution process also that enforcement and control come during and after the execution stage of any kind of project. So enforcement and control reports or enforcement and control strategies are also that they are carried out during and after execution of a project in order to better execute a project or improve the efficiency of how a project is being executed and how it is delivering the particular assets or services that you want delivered. Then is the detailed project report or DPR. So DPR is what is an extensive and elaborate outline of a project which includes essential information such as the resources and tasks that need to be carried out in order to make the project turn into a success. So you most of the time in urban development plans, you have several physical proposals and strategies which are outlined in the urban development plan. But in order to execute those proposals or those strategies, in order to finally implement them, you need to further detail out what are the resources that you need, what are the tasks, the small tasks that will need to be done or will need to be carried out, what time frame do you need, what other resources do you need, what kind of institutional framework will help you execute it, what kind of interagency collaboration you need. All of those things are detailed out in DPRs or detailed project reports. So these are what a detailed project reports are. So pre-feasibility study, I think you can understand pre-feasibility study always comes before you study whether a project that you're planning to execute or you're planning for a project, if the project is feasible at all or not. So this will, as it's very clear that it will come along with the detailed project report when you are trying to assess the resources, tasks, and several other components which are associated with the project. When you take an account of all of that and you try to assess what all is needed, during that time only you can kind of do a pre-feasibility study of a project, whether the project can be undertaken or not. So I hope this was clear. Moving on to the next question. The next question is, MS Project and Primavera are types of tools used in what? And you have 4 options: project simulation, project management, data analysis, and project presentation. So this question is talking about different project management tools and methods. So this is a list of the different tools and methods that you would have studied in your lectures. So we always have work plans, so you can just plan your work, break it down into individual tasks and subtasks, or you can even establish how they are related, which tasks need to precede which other tasks, that kind of thing. This can be done even better using bar charts. So it is a better visual representation and lets you understand in a more uh, more visual way how the work needs to be broken down and connected with each task, and according to a timeline which task goes where. Then you have further more elaborate kinds of methods of planning out project tasks and parts of a project. So for example, you have project evaluation and review techniques, or PERT, and you have the critical path method. So uh, critical path method, or critical path analysis also you can call it, it is basically a project management technique that requires mapping out the key tasks though that are necessary to complete a project, and there can be some subsidiary tasks which will go along with the project. But what CPM, or critical path method, or critical path analysis, what it does is that it identifies the key tasks in your project which you can't finish the project without. So if those tasks don't get completed, and if they don't get completed on time, you won't be able to complete your project. So this is what critical path analysis does. How does it do it? It does it through project evaluation and review techniques, or PERT. Sometimes it's called PERT chart also. So what this tool is, it's basically a project management tool in which the stages of different projects they are graphically represented using on a chart. So this is one stage of a project which is finished. This is a arrow, which is arrow depicting the process of execution of this task. So when this task is finished, you reach to this stage, which is after the execution of this particular task. So in this way you can graphically depict different parts of a task, how some tasks can go parallelly, how some tasks or some stages have to come one after the other, they cannot happen parallelly. All of this you can map in a visual way using this kind of graphical representation, which is called a PERT chart. So when you use this PERT chart, you can then, from analysis of this network, you can even identify a critical path based on the project timelines and the stages when they need to finish, and maybe sometimes even the amount of time or other resources they use. You can identify the critical path that these are the stages or these are the tasks in this entire project which need to get completed, and they need to get completed in time in order for this project to get completed in time. So that is what CPM is. So CPM PERT is basically a visual project management technique which you can use to plan, schedule, organize and coordinate and control uncertain activities which are part of a project. And CPM is a statistical technique uh, which you can use to plan, schedule, organize and coordinate uh, and use to control and coordinate well-defined activities. And CPM, as I mentioned, using CPM you can identify which are the tasks which are key or critical to completion of the project. So CPM is also often used to control cost and time related to any project. So this is what CPM and PERT is. Then there are several other things like decomposition of activities. So if there is a big or larger activity, you can break it down. You can identify which parts are essential, which are not. Then there is also activity sequencing or scheduling, which is again used in bar charts or work plans also. So you can sequence which activity comes before, which activity comes after, at what time which activity should be completed, etc. Then activity duration also, it is related to the same thing. Critical activities and critical path, both related to the CPM technique. Then there are duration compression techniques also. So if you would have heard of things like crash course, or sometimes there are other terminologies also in which you try to finish the project without reducing the scope of the project. So you try to finish the entire scope of the activities that are within the project, but you try to reduce the time which it takes to finish the project. So either you can employ larger number of resources, you can outsource some things, or some kind of other techniques you can use, but essentially what you are doing is that you are compressing the time or the duration that is required to finish that project. So duration compression techniques is essentially that. So these are the different methods or statistical tools which you can use for project management. Then there are other uh, softwares or software based tools also which you can use for project management. So the two very good examples of such tools are Microsoft project and Primavera. So these both are tools which in which you can learn and manage your project. You can learn project management and you can use those tools for project management. They provide an interface where you can put in your tasks, you can break down your tasks, set durations for your tasks, schedule them, uh, uh, put how they are interconnected, which tasks needs to go first, which tasks need to go second. You can even monitor how certain tasks are being completed, which tasks are taking longer than planned, etc. So it provides you an interface for your project management. So I have linked the website for both the software. So this is the website for Microsoft project, and this is the one for Primavera, which is Oracle. If you want to take a look at the softwares and you want to learn more about project management, feel free to go to any of these links and check out the softwares. They even do certification courses. So if you want to learn more about project management and get certified to further work in the field of project management, maybe in the related to project management can happen local bodies, etc. Feel free to go ahead and check out these topics. Okay, moving on to the next question. So next question for today is, turnkey contract is a type of asset creation contract. Is it a true or a false statement? So we know that there are basically two types of contracts. One is an asset creation contract and another is a service provision contract. So asset creation contracts are the ones at the end of the contract, the output from that contract is an asset. So at the end of the contract, you get an asset from the person who has been contracted to provide that asset. Service provision contract are different because at the end of the contract you don't get a particular assets, but you get some kinds of service provided as an output or as a product of that contract. So these are the two basic types of contracts. So asset creation contracts are things like item rate contract or lump sum contracts or turnkey contracts, and service provision contracts include management contracts. So you give service operation to a private partner or any contractor, and they manage that service provision or service delivery system for you, and you pay the private partner or whoever the contract for maintenance or management of that service delivery. Then there are lease agreements. So you lease out some kind of building or asset which provides or caters some kind of service, and you lease that building to a service provider or a contract who acts as a service provider. So they are leasing the building or the asset from you, and they're using it to provide a certain kind of service. And at the end of the contract or lease agreement, in this case, the building or the asset comes back to the owner. Then there are concessions also. Maybe a public partner provides some kinds of concession to a private partner in order for the private partner to establish certain kind of buildings or assets which he can then use to provide certain services to the end user. Then there are direct private investment also. So the public body can have or want to have a certain kind of project for some kind of service provision, in which it will invite direct investments from private players, so they can invest their money into that project, and when the project starts its service provision or it starts delivering its services to the end user, the profit that is generated from that service provision, some part of the profit is shared by the private player as well, as he is an investor in that project. So these are the different kinds of service provision contract. So as you know, turnkey project is kind of public sector project for procurement model for infrastructure or infrastructure facilities. In a turnkey project, the private contractor builds a facility for a fixed fee or a fixed rate, uh, and then after building it, it delivers that project to the public player or the public partner. So there are different criteria based on how the turnkey project is allocated or awarded to a certain contractor. So there are things like selecting the winning bid. So there is a bidding process. There are certain criteria on how to select which is the best bid among the different bidders, etc. And during the entire process of asset creation, all the risks involved with the design and construction phase of the asset is borne by the private partner only. And the scale of investment is by the private sector is generally low and for a short term in case of turnkey projects. So because turnkey project is something in which the private partner is designing and building a certain asset and then giving that asset to a public partner, it is sometimes known as a design build project also. So from the description of the turnkey projects, it is very clearly understandable that in a turnkey project, the private partner builds an asset, design and builds an asset, and then hands over the asset to the public partner at the end of the project. So from this, it is very clear that it is an asset creation contract, not a service provision contract. So I hope this question is clear. Similar other kinds of questions can also be asked. So this is a question which is not from the previous run, but it is from even a run even earlier than that. So this question is very similar to that one. So I included it. This question asks about the boot model. So build, own, operate and transfer model. So you can see it again asks the same question, that if boot contract is a type of service provision contract or is it an asset creation contract. So you can see from the description of boot, you can see from the description that boot is based on granting of a concession by the by the public partner to the concessionaire or the public partner or the private partner or the contractor who will take the concession, who is responsible for construction, finance and operation and maintenance of a particular facility. So over a period of time, they will build the particular facility. They will own it and operate it for a certain period of time, for which they will get concessions, and after that certain period of time is over, they will transfer the fully functional and operational facility to the public partner. So this is one kind of contract model. Again, you can see that it is although they are handing over uh, a particular asset that they have built, but it is the asset is more geared towards service provision than the asset itself. So it is basically a contract which enables service provision in behalf of a public partner. So the private partner provides certain kind of service to the end user through this kind of project models. So again, it is a kind of a service provision contract. So I hope this is also clear. These both are similar kind of questions. That's why I showed both. So you can get questions asking you whether certain kind of contract, is it a asset creation contract or is it a service provision contract. So these are the things which you can keep in mind while deciding which kind of contract the question is asking about. Okay. Again, you can refer to the URDPFI guidelines also. I added this here so that you can remember. The URDPFI guidelines contains details about all of these kind of models for public-private partnerships. So for even supply and management contracts, for lease agreements, for concessions, fair projects, fair private, the ownership of the asset is private. There are several different kinds of public-private partnership models and project contract models. So if you want to read in detail about each kind of PPP model, you go ahead and check the URDPFI guidelines, and for different models you can check whether they are service provision contract or they are asset creation contract. Moving on to the next question. Next question is sector integration is one of the principles of, then you have four options: ULB finance, LIG housing, project development, and slum management. So, LIG housing and slum management we just covered in the last sections. You already know what they are. LIG housing is housing financing for people belonging to the lower income groups, and slum management is uh, management or management of redevelopment activities or uh, man, or management of service provision or better infrastructure and service provision in slum area. So that is what LIG housing and slum management is. Then ULB finance, again you know ULB finance is related to municipal finance. That also I think we covered in one of the previous sessions what ULB finance is, what powers the ULB have to finance, where the revenue comes from, what uh, revenues they use, how different kind of centrally sponsored schemes and other schemes also enable them to finance municipal projects, etc. So that is what ULB finances. Then is project development. So in the project development principles, you would have studied there are several principles related to project development, or several aspects which you think about whenever you are developing a project. So especially in terms of project related to urban development, for these are the principles which are followed. First is sector integration. So whenever you develop a project, you see that the project which you are developing, it is integrated to the sector or to the plans or development plans of that particular sector, whether it is fulfilling the particular objectives of that are envisioned for the sector or not, whether it is following the guidelines or mandates that have been uh, assigned to or associated with that particular sector or not. That is what is the first step of project development. Then you see the technical viability. So technical viability, you can see where the project is technically viable or not. So is it rationally, can you explain why the project is needed and what you are going to do in the project that will essentially fulfill your aims and objectives. If the project, if you have the correct resources and technology in order to execute the project, and several other things that come under technical viability. Then you have next stage where you see the financial sustainability and economic viability. So in this you see where you have the essential financial resources or not in order to sustain the project over the project lifetime and maybe even later. And do you have or do you or do you not have the economic resources needed in order to plan and execute the project. Then there are environmental and social safeguards. So this you check after you've decided the scope of your project, that whether your project will have certain negative or detrimental effects on the environment, or maybe it will have some positive effects on the environment, and you make adjustments to your project accordingly. Same is for social safeguards also. So you see how during this process you see how your project affects the society who will, as a consequence of this project, get some kind of asset or service. So is your project of uh, is your project of a detrimental nature to a society? Is it acceptable in a social scenario or not? So those kind of things are studied or understood while studying the social sectors. Then you have institutional arrangements. So you see whether you have essential capacity or essential institutional capacity to carry out the project. What are the different agencies that will be needed to take part in execution of this project, and then you maybe even develop a collaboration agreement between the institutions and agency, which is required to plan and implement this project. Then you see the legal and regulatory framework. So this comes even, I think it's written at the sixth number, but you can even check this before planning your project. So you can see the legal and regulatory compliance of your project if according to the legal framework, legal and regulatory framework, your project is viable or not. And after all of this comes the procurement stage. Then after deciding all of your financial resource and all of your needs, you try to procure a contractor or a service provider or someone who will procure all the resources and maybe even human resources and finance that is needed to plan and execute this project, and then they can do that for you. That is the procurement step. So these are all the aspects or principles related to project development, and from this you can see that sector integration is actually a part of project development. So I hope that is clear. Another important thing of this is the technical viability, and this is another question which I found from earlier sessions that is relevant to this, so I have put it here, that whether there are two parts of technical viability. First is always, and it is specifically in terms of cost design of a project. So there is always a least design or least cost design, and there is an optimal cost design. So this question pertains to if they belong to technical viability or not. That I've already told you that they belong to the technical viability analysis of project development. I want to ask whether you know what is the difference between optimal cost design and least cost design. Can anyone answer?
Optimal cost design may be based on market rates, and least cost will be just market rates with maybe a provision for a profit for the contractor executing team, whereas the other one would probably mean that it is just base as on cost, with a very minimal kind of a profit, if at all.
Anjali, do you want to answer?
I think optimal would mean neither the least nor a high cost. And least would be always the lowest tendered value.
Yes. So Anjali got more closer to the answer. So optimum is something which is optimum solution or optimum situation. You can say it is the most conducive to a certain favorable outcome. It is the most favorable situation for anything. So when we say least cost design, least cost may not be the best case for your project. It is possible that least cost is something in which you try to reduce the costs of project as much as possible. But it is possible that because of reduction of the costs, uh, there can be some aspects or some qualities of the end product or end service that you won't be able to achieve if you increase the costs a little bit. So optimal cost design is kind of a technique or kind of type of technical viability analysis, or you determine that this is the amount of cost which will produce the best results for what it is costing. So the returns that you get on your costs is the best in case of optimal cost design. In the case of least cost design, the price is or the cost is the least, but the returns that you are getting uh, compared to the cost that you are paying are not as much. While in the case of optimal cost design, the returns that you are getting on the cost that you have invested in a certain project are the best. So this is what the difference there is between the optimal and least cost design. And these both are part of technical viability analysis for a project. Okay, moving on to the next question. So this is a question which talks about certain terms related to a project. So it's basically related to the definition of a project. So what a project is, and it gives you XYZ three blanks in which you have to fix these probable answers. So it defines the project as project is a set of is a X set of interrelated tasks to be executed over a fixed Y and within certain Z and other limitations. So this basically comes from this definition of a project. So project, according to this, project is a planned set of interrelated tasks to be executed over a fixed period and within a certain costs and other limitations. So whichever words which I have kept in bold, you pay attention to those words and you remember that these are the specific words or components of a project which define what a project is. So project is something which is planned, is not unplanned. Then it contains certain tasks and those tasks are interrelated. So they are either interrelated in a way that they all need to happen in order to achieve the objectives of a project, or maybe one thing needs to be completed in order for another thing to be completed. Maybe some things can happen parallelly, but in some way or the other, the tasks are interrelated. Then you have a fixed time period to execute a project. So the tasks related to the project need to be executed over a fixed period. And then you also have certain fixed financial resources which you have for the project. So it has to be within a certain costs. And then you have certain other limitations, like maybe you have environmental limitations, you have limitations on what is socially acceptable, you have limitations on the technical viability or the technology that is available for execution of the of your project, and several other things. So apart from this, there are certain limitations also. So this is kind of a very general definition of what a project is, and these are the terms which you need to keep in mind in order to solve any question like this. Okay, moving on to the last question for today. So this is, choose the option which best describes the criteria for pre-qualification of contractors. And then you have options: organizational structure, technical expertise, financial strength, organizational, technical, and financial capacity. So last option is a combination of all the three previous options. So as we studied that when you are assessing the qualification of contractors, there is a pre-qualification which is the qualification assessment before the project is assigned to the contractor, and there is a post-qualification. So that is qualification assessment after they have finished the project. So in the post-qualification, you assess whether they have completed the basic requirement of the project or not, and it is again kind of a two-stage evaluation. So once it occurs at the end of the project period, when you receive the asset, and one it occurs later, so after you're using the asset or the product that has been delivered to you. So that comes under post qualification, and this two-stage evaluation, it can be iterative in nature also. In the pre-qualification, qualification is assessed before giving the project to a contractor. So in this, you need to see whether the contractor is suitable for the types and classes of work which you are assigning to them or not, whether they can work for the particular project period or not, whether they'll be able to finish the work in that particular project period. And then there are subsequent re-evaluation based on how the project is being executed. So the criteria for all of these pre-qualification are all the three. It is the organizational, technical, and financial capacity, all the three. The organizational capacity tells you about the organizational structure of the contractor or their company, if they are well organized to undertake all the tasks, if they have enough human resource, enough expertise, enough capacity to undertake the project. Technical expertise means they have the technical knowledge and resources to execute, to plan and execute the project that they are undertaking. And financial capacity is something which you see if they have enough financial resources which they can use in order to plan and execute the particular project that will be assigned to them through the contract. So these are the different criteria of pre-qualification using which you assess whether a contractor is suitable for a particular project or not. So I hope this was clear. This was the last question for today. Thank you all for listening. If you have any further questions, please go ahead and ask. Anita, Anji, do you have any more questions?
Nothing, ma'am. Thank you.
Anjali, would you like to ask anything?
Actually, no. I mean, this is like pretty explanatory today. Thank you. Yeah. Nothing actually.
Okay. Good. Uh,
I'm just one. Sorry, before you close. Sorry. Uh, for the exam, which is on the 28th, I think, of this month, October,
okay. Okay. I do not
we
know
have to
the
receive.
date of the exam that you would have received in your email. You'll get,
We haven't received any.
okay.
We'll get sometime this week, I assume.
Oh, okay. So you will get to choose your exam center also, I think, in the coming weeks, and
Okay.
your final date will be finalized after that only. So once you choose your exam center, based on the availability of space
Okay.
in the center that you have chosen, they'll give you a final date. It's the date usually varies only a few days before or after the stipulated date that they have given. So there must be a stipulated date
Okay.
in on the portal. So once you apply for uh, your center of choice, then they'll see if enough seats are available for the center which you have selected, and based on that they'll give you a date when you can appear for your exam. All of the information uh, regarding the center selection and download of admit cards, etc., they'll come to you via email only. And if they have not come yet, they'll come in this week or coming. But everything, all the information you will receive on your email.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, if
Yeah. Okay.
mhm.
Sorry. Can I request you to just retouch a little on sector integration? Just like briefly once again.
Okay, so sector integration is basically something when you are uh, designing or developing a project. So before developing the project, you need to see certain things uh, in order to see if the project is feasible or not, if it can be done or not. So uh, sector integration especially comes in context of urban development or urban development projects. So when you see that urban development plans, often they are designed sector wise. So each sector has, so there can be infrastructure sector, there can be social services, or environment, or maybe some particular infrastructure like solid waste management, or sewerage, etc. So there are several sectors according to which a development plan is made. And when you are proposing projects for any kind, or you're proposing any kind of projects, you have to see in which sector the project fits, and then you have to see whether it fits according to whatever goals and objectives we have for that sector in our urban development plan. So as I mentioned earlier also, that we have urban development plan which details out general strategies or general uh, objectives which we need to fulfill in order to achieve what we want, according to the vision statement or our perspective plan or regional plan. Then that gets further detailed down to, into the development plan, where we propose uh, certain projects or certain strategies for achieving something. And then to achieve that particular thing, that particular aspect of that objective, we devise certain projects. So for example, if you want to achieve climate resilience, so you imagine if you want to achieve climate resilience. So if your development plan has planned that you want to achieve climate resilience or resilience against maybe urban floods, then you want to develop a project which uh, uh, which helps you achieve resilience against urban floods. So there can be several different kinds of projects related to that. So you need to see if the project which you are seeing is it fits in the sector of your urban development plan or your regional plan or vision plan or not. So maybe maybe in cases of some development plans, now there is more and more leaning towards nature-based solutions. So if your development plan says that it will employ more nature-based solutions for climate resilience or climate adaptation planning, you have to see that the project that you are designing, is it a nature-based solution or is it a nature-based project or not. So you can't just put in engineered solutions for flood resilience. You need to see that the solutions that you are putting in, they can be blue-green infrastructure. So they can be a mix of engineered solution and a nature-based solution. So in that way, whenever you develop any kind of project, you need to see that what are the goals or objectives of that particular sector in your development plan or your regional plan or vision statement, and does your project fits the requirements of that sectors or not? Does it get integrated with the sector's needs or requirement or not? That is what sector integration is. I hope that is clear.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Any other questions? I think there are no more questions for today, so I think I'll close this session. Uh, Next week's session and the week after that will be our last two sessions. So I'll encourage you that if you have any doubts from previous sessions also, please go through the course material, go through the previous lectures, and if you find any doubts or any concepts which you could not get to, which you have missed earlier, please bring them in the next two sessions, because those will be our last sessions before your exams. So I strongly encourage you that go through the material once before our sessions are finished, and bring them to me, bring all your doubts to me before our sessions conclude. Thank you very much for attending today. I'll close today's session.
Thank you. Thank you.